All right, everybody. I believe we are live. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of The Shit Show. If you watch it, you know why it's called that. My name's Stax from Stax Farmstead, X Rumble, YouTube. Go subscribe and watch on YouTube. We're real close to getting monetized, so every little bit of watch time helps. Drew, say hi to everybody.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining.
We have a great guest today. Alchemical Tech Revolutions, also known as Wayne McRoy. Uh, Wayne, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm going to show your website here and tell everybody where they can find you and what you do.
All right, man. Once again, thank you for having me on the show here. I always appreciate getting out on new and different platforms to reach different people. My name is Wayne McRoy. I could be reached at my website, www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. And Jason is showing that right now on the screen for everybody to see. You can check out my work there. I go across the bounds of a lot of different topics. I cover an awful lot. So basically, the alchemical tech revolution came about many, many years ago as just an idea in my head because I noticed some things in the world happening and I was able to connect some dots. And I realized that many of of the things we're handed in the modern era relating to our modern sciences and things like that relate back to some of the older natural sciences and all of the occult concepts that you would find within that. So that's where I started with a lot of this concept of the alchemical tech revolution. And I wrote my first book back in 2017 and went public then. But I'm coming at this with a lifetime of deep research into many of these topics. So I cover the bounds of all different areas, mostly the occult. I like to tell people I accidentally became an expert in occult philosophy. So it's amazing how all these things interconnect at the highest, most levels when you really begin digging deep. So there's a lot of interesting things I cover on the podcast. And it's not an interview-paced podcast like most of the other ones out there. I do a lot of monologuing. So I think I told you guys off air before we started, if I'm going a little too long and you need to cut me off or have questions or something that relates to what I'm talking about, don't be afraid to just butt in because I sometimes get a little over talkative with a lot of this
We,
stuff.
we will not interrupt you while you're cooking, that's for sure. Um, all right, so if anybody isn't aware, how do I put this? So I find the subjects that Wayne covers extremely interesting, especially today with the stuff that we see around us. The data centers, all of the tech, the AI, the track trace database that goes on constantly with everything that you do. You can't lay in bed and talk about wanting a new mattress without getting mattress ads the following day on your phone, right? So, like this is the world that we're walking into. So I think it's important to kind of point out, and Wayne does a really good job of this with specifics, is these are like from what I can tell is that this is just the beginning of what ultimately would probably turn into a police state through AI, and you have to kind of ask yourself, like the Minority Report stuff, where like they see a pattern in something because they're track tracing and databasing you constantly, and they think you're going to do a thing, and then you get a knock on the door. That's not far from reality, in my opinion, as we go down this road. And more or less, that's one of the bigger things as of now that I can see potentially becoming a problem in the near future, especially because social media, everyone wants to give their opinion on everything. And at the same time, they're creating laws saying that you can't criticize certain people, you can't say certain things. Well, what's next then? Well, they're going to put this law in place and they're going to say, you can't say or do this. And then they build this giant portfolio on people, and then they pick them off one by one. And I think that is just the beginning of what we may see going forward. However, as Crow said when he was on, I think that this is sort of grasping at straws, a last-ditch effort for them to get this control that they really, really want. I think that there's a lot of hope if you can understand it that way. I think that, like, if you can see that things are changing. I say it all the time. I don't know how to describe it, but there's a change in the world, and I don't know how to verbalize it in the way to make other people understand and see it. But my first question to you, Wayne, would be like, do you see that in the world too? Like, do you see things changing around you, like different things that are sort of standing out to say there's something happening? Do you pick up on that at all?
Oh, I most certainly do. Something has changed and shifted here, especially within the past year. Over the course of the past year, there's a lot more minds waking up to what's going on here. Now, we hit the lowest point of this ever back in 2020 when they instituted the whole scamdemic situation on everybody.
Hmm.
That put people at an all-time low, and it's sad to say, far too many capitulated to the nonsense that they tried to sell us.
Yes.
That kind of set us back a ways. But now, because of that, and here, this is the thing. This was a catalyst for this sort of awakening that's going on now. Many people through that began to see that the corruption is rampant and that we're being lied to from all different angles.
Yeah.
That was the perfect example of that, and that was most certainly them beginning to panic because they know what's coming. Because when you understand that things operate in a cyclical nature in this reality that we live in, once you know those energies are present and you try to leverage them to whatever way you can, that's what these controllers of this world have largely leveraged against us. They understand the inherent natural energies present. This goes back to some of the older occult teachings. They have a much better grasp of all of this than we do, those
Hmm.
people that sit at the topmost levels of power in this world. This is how I describe the power structure in this world. This is how I came up with it to try to help people understand basically how it works. At the topmost levels of the power structure, you have what I call the dark occultists who run things, because they most certainly are occultists, and they utilize the dark side of things to manipulate people. Now, just beneath them, you have their ineffectual middle management that they call the technocrats, or that I refer to as the technocrats. And this encapsulates much of the power players of this world, where you find many of the real policies and stuff being instituted. And this goes beyond governments. This is what people need to really get a firm grasp on. Your government is just a puppet on a stage. Governments don't really do anything. What really gets things done and sets policies are governance organizations. So there's a key distinction between government and governance. And this is the most important thing, because largely you find what they call NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, actually calling the shots and setting up policies and writing laws and everything else. And then their moneyed interests in Congress or wherever the power lies in the officialment of government, they proceed with putting forward these policies and passing bills and doing whatever the governance organization tells them. And this reaches beyond the realms or the bounds of national borders, because you have many of these organizations that steer policy across the world. So we're talking about organizations like the World Economic Forum. Why is it that everything the World Economic Forum says like 3 years ago all of a sudden is happening now?
Mm.
Well, this is because it's planning. And if you don't mind, I'd like to speak a little bit to what you were talking about the police state and thought crime and all of that stuff.
Not at all. Go right ahead.
Yep.
Well, what you're talking about is indeed very real. Thought crime is a real thing. It was actually ported over and used in the city of New Orleans in 2012. They instituted a secret policy where Palantir Corporation worked with the local police department in New Orleans, and they test ran a new type of software algorithm where they would predict crime. It was a pre-crime algorithm. They did this. This is a fact. You can look it up.
In
And
2012.
in 2012, this
Wow.
was done covertly without the awareness of the public or their consent to do so. So what this essentially did is this policing algorithm set up by Palantir and their surveillance tech would determine where it's likely that a crime would occur. So it would come up with a hit that on the corner of such and such a street in this street at 12:05 a.m. on this date, it's 90% probable that such and such a crime will happen at that point. So place your officers there at that point. They did this in New Orleans in 2012. This was proof of concept. It works. It worked. It's become far more advanced now. Palantir is using those tools today. ICE has those tools right now. They're compiling databases with people with this software, and the nation state of Israel and their military are using this same Palantir software and tools.
Oh,
So
geez.
selective policing, it's a real thing. Thought crime, real thing. And there's more to it than that. It goes a lot deeper, and we could touch on a little deeper portions of this later.
Well,
'Cause you-
quick question. Quick question. Is it still in its infancy, or would you say it's past that point at this point? Because I wasn't aware of 2012. Is it still in its infancy, or do you think that it's wide open now?
Well, here's what I've discovered through many years of looking into these things. I've found that deep within the auspices of the special access programs of the military industrial complex, they are bare minimum 30 to 50 years ahead of anything that you would see as state of the art in the public domain. So this stuff's been developed for a long time. The entire infrastructure to use it in to such effect as we see today may not have been existent then, but they understood, they war gamed out how to use it and how to do this and how to set it up. And they've come up with plans how to do this. That's why during the whole scamdemic situation come 2020, they locked everybody down. They said only essential workers can go out. Well, who was part and parcel of those essential workers out there? Well, the people installing the 5G networks. Isn't that interesting? What's the
Yeah.
purpose for that? It's all a build up for this. They needed the infrastructure, and right now they're rolling out 6G. And Trump signed an executive order or something that came out on WhiteHouse.org talking about building the 6G infrastructure and how it's all about bioinformatics and everything like that. So this is why RFK is pushing for wearables, devices he calls wearables, like your Fitbit and all of this stuff, sensors. It all has to do with the Internet of Things, and it has to do with a subsystem of the Internet of Things called the Internet of Bodies. And you can find a World Economic Forum white paper that came out back in 2018 called The Internet of Bodies is Here. So this is a real thing. It's a real deal. There are all kinds of white papers talking about this stuff out there in the scientific literature. And another subsystem of the Internet of Bodies, that's an important thing to lead up to here, is called the Internet of Thoughts. This is going to be a major subsystem, and this is what they're trying to get online right now. So this has to do with instituting the infrastructure for things like a social credit score and all of those different things. They have the surveillance tools and the surveillance tech in place right now to really do a lot. And the infrastructure is already in place. It's just not completely active yet, or it hasn't gone live yet in the Western world. Now, there are portions of China that already have some of this in place. You could find videos on YouTube and all over the place where you'll see where people in China, okay, I can't get into the store. They have to take their smartphone with them with their, what's it called? I forget what the name of the
We app or something like that.
whatever it is. That's the thing that's the thing they have to have. That's their social media. It's their form of Facebook. Well,
Yeah.
that has a social credit score on them. So if they don't behave, they get denied access to going in stores, using public transportation, leaving the country, or flying on an airplane, all kinds of restrictions that they have. It's become quite draconian in parts of China. And this is what they're porting over here into the Western world. But right now, the infrastructure's there in the West. It just hasn't been fully implemented yet. So we're just sitting, it's a waiting game. And that's why they want to build these data centers, because
Right.
they need this massive data capacity in order to collect all this information, right down to your biometric information and your genetic information, all of that, in order to really put this whole thing in place. They needed to transform the medical system. That's what the true rollout of this whole scamdemic was all about. It wasn't because there's some new illness or something in the world that they're concerned about. That had nothing to do with it. The new illness was the excuse to roll out the surveillance network, the medical surveillance network, and that's what they're trying to do. That's what they've been building ever since. But the good news is there's a lot of people who are becoming aware that this is what's going on now, and they don't like it. So this is kind of a topic that crosses the bounds of the political divide. Everybody you talk to are concerned about data centers. Nobody
Yeah.
wants them.
No.
They don't serve a practical purpose at all, other than to suck up our resources and make the costs for our electricity and for our water and for everything else go sky high. And for
Yep.
what? So you could generate a stupid AI cat video? Like, seriously. Is that what they want us to believe that they're putting these things in place for?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's actually very true about how some people, like it's the one thing that I've seen universally is that it seems to be like nobody wants them because nobody can point to an upside of having it. There's nobody. They just say we need them, and the taxpayers are going to pay for them. The CEO of BlackRock and something else he's a CEO of, Larry Fink, admits that trillions of dollars being used to build data centers and power grids will come from ordinary people's savings accounts and pensions funds and says it's mandatory. That is crazy. But I think it just goes to show to what level they're willing to take it mandatory. So they're going to take your money in some way, shape, or form, and use it to fund the thing that is ultimately going to end up being your digital prison, which eventually could turn into an actual prison if it deems you the bad guy in some way, shape, or form. But I have seen a lot of people on both sides say what this does no good, and I can only see bad coming from it. But the crazy part is obviously they're paying off local politicians and they're still getting built. There was a town somewhere where they did that, and then they voted out everybody that was on the city council the following election, but it's still getting built. And then the crazy part is I seen an interview with one of these guys that were doing this, and they wanted more restrictions on drones. Who could use them, where they could use them. They're already registered if you do it legally. And now allegedly, like they come with tracking devices so that while it's in the air, they can see them. And the whole reason for it was because he was concerned with terrorism, that they could take a $3,000 drone and put a bomb on it and send it into the data center. Like, who's thinking that? Like, you know what I mean? It should be an indicator to everybody that, like, they know there's going to be pushback once people start putting it all together. And they're scared to the point that they're preemptively trying to get around the most viable options to destroy them. That's fascinating to me. It's sort of just like showing your cards. And I don't know, it's crazy, but I mean, we could actually see stuff like that happen. Not that I want it to happen. I'm not saying that. But I mean, we could actually see that happen because if you build them without people's consent, and then it takes their resources, the water, the energy, and the prices all go up. I mean, what options do you leave people that if you game plan it, that's what people are eventually going to do? They're going to try to stop it from happening. I don't. Let me put it this way: what do you think, from what you know now, if they continue? What would the next step be? You know, obviously the construction of the data centers, but like if they get what they want as far as that, what's the next step as far as you can tell that they're going to want to take it to?
Well, eventually, what's going to happen if they get their way and they're able to actually get away with building all these data centers everywhere, which there are people pushing back against that. And we really need to push back even harder because, like you said, you see that going on all over the place where you have these town councils or whatever saying, we don't want a data center here. And there's a lot of town councils, like in the area I live locally, there's a couple different townships around me that had meetings about how they don't want to build a data center at all in
Mm,
their township. And that seems to be the majority of people don't want it. But we do see that happen, and then somehow or another they grease the skids and get the thing built anyway, like you were saying.
right.
So these are the things we have to be weary of because they're paying off the right people at the right places, and they're claiming national defense and stuff like that and national security for reasoning to build some of these things when it's not really an accurate assessment to say that at all. But that's the excuse they use. So we need to be mindful of that. But where this will ultimately lead is if they get all these data centers and stuff in place that they want, it's going to drive up costs for energy and resources and stuff so much that it's going to break the bank of the average person. So your average people here will be hurting financially, which will ultimately lead to this kind of economic collapse that they've been slowly rolling towards here. This will make it like escalate in much of a fashion once they get these in place. And consider also the way they're trying to replace people with AI and the job market everywhere with all this different stuff going on too. That plays a role as well. So the ultimate goal in the short term for this, tank the economy so that the people will need a solution.
Yeah.
They have a ready-made solution for this problem. It's called universal basic income.
Yep.
And this is where they'll get people on the government dime, and this is how they'll get their social credit score and everything in place. Their foot in the door with that. Because the government will sweep in as savior and say, okay, we see people are hurting. We've made some terrible mistakes. The politicians and everything are so corrupt. Everything's bad. So to prevent this from happening in the future, we need to give people a little bit of a financial cushion. We need to help them. We need to make sure their basic needs are met. So they'll roll out the universal basic income. But here's where they get you with it. It's going to be a digital currency first and foremost, and it's going to be a programmable digital currency. They already have some prototype tests of this already in place. If you're familiar with the food stamps program in much of the country, you get a little card, and you can only use it to buy food, certain things. And if you don't use it for those things, it doesn't work. And it has an expiration date. This is what's going to happen with the universal basic income. You'll be able to use it to pay your rent or pay utilities, maybe buy food, some necessities, but anything beyond that, you won't be able to use it for. They'll have it as programmable. And if you don't use it in a certain time frame, it disappears. And this way, they ensure people can't have savings. They can't acquire a savings of some sort. So that's what Larry Fink's talking about. First of all, when he's saying people are going to pay for it, you're going to pay for it whether you have money in the bank or not. They're going to get that from you. That's exactly what they have planned and have in mind for it. So this is how they get their foot in the door, first of all, to get into everybody's bank accounts and pocketbooks. You were going to say something? I didn't want to cut you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to shoehorn this one in here because I tried to make it relevant in every show, because no matter what we talk about, this light bulb goes on every time. Self-sufficiency is what I practice as much as I can. And what I've preached for years is that to take while your money's still valuable and get things that can help you for when it isn't. So like we bought some land and we put some animals in an orchard, and I built a building, and the building's off grid. Like everything you see in here is running off solar right now. We got Starlink, that's how we're getting the connection. If tomorrow they turned off the power, it would affect this place none. But it just goes to show, the reason why I brought it up is because I want to always reiterate that point for anybody that's sort of on the fence about doing it. It's like, I can't think of a better time than 5 years ago, but at least do it now. Get started now, because I've said this before. I don't know. I shoehorn this point in every single time, but the leverage that they use against you is what if you're in debt and you need a job to pay your debt, they're going to try to pull your resources away from you in order to make you do a thing. Now, if you're not indebted in some way, if you're not under their heel in some way, then you don't have to do that. We've seen this during COVID. It's one of the reasons why I went all in back in 2020 is because like this is for real. This is a test run. This is what they're going to ultimately try to do. They figured out how to use the leverage points, and this is what they're going to try to do going forward for everybody. And right now, the dollar is quickly losing its value, but it still has some value. So like, it just my opinion, I'll tell you what I did is I took all the money that I had and went and bought things that would help me become self-sufficient, because they are going to tank the dollar. They don't have any other choice. You can't be trillions in debt. That's unpayable, and something like that not happen. And you're 100% right. I believe it's going to be digital, and that right there, just like China, there's how they're going to get you. You can't do this, you can't do that. And I brought this up on other shows too. Like, it's at the point now where they're building cars that the car's going to evaluate whether or not you can drive it. So, like, buy an old car, learn how to work on it, become self-sufficient as possible, use that money while it still has value, and get yourself on your own 2 feet. Because I've been saying, like, everyone's always money, 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 my retirement, my stocks, my pension, my 401k. And I'm trying to tell them they're using that to build your cage. That's what's happening.
That's not going to be there in the very near future.
Right.
Your 401k, all that money you have sacked aside in your retirement account, it's going to be gone. It's going to disappear. It's not going to be there. They can't pay it to you now. They do
Right.
not financially have the backing for that. If you go to any bank here in America, how it's supposed to be is you could go in there, and if you have X amount of dollars, say you have $10,000 in your savings account there, you should be able to go in and withdraw that $10,000 right then and there
Yeah.
in gold or silver, in real valuable currency. They can't do that. They don't have the backing or means to do that. And now they have this is a banking industry thing. They have all kinds of surveillance going on in the banking system that many people aren't aware of. Like, for instance, I briefly worked a job for about a month at a bank, and some of the things they had to train me on, some of the federal laws and stuff, really showed me the cards of what goes on at the banking system. Like, for instance, if you go into any bank in America, now this was as of like 5 years ago or so, maybe 6 years now. I don't know, it may have changed some then. But if you went into a bank back then and you wanted to take out, say, $3,000 out of your account, your money in your account, the tellers are urged to ask you questions about that, but
Yeah.
be subtle about it. They're told, oh, well, ask questions, say, oh, doing anything good? And most people will actually spill the beans. Yeah, I'm remodeling the house or something. And they actually type that into the computer. When people, I'm not kidding. This goes
Wow.
on every bank in America. I didn't know about this until I had actually worked briefly at a bank, but thankfully, thank God, that really didn't work out. It wasn't a bad job for me at the time, but it just did not work out for me, and I learned some things about the banking system. But
Let me tell you something real quick. It's just a real quick funny story on that point. Is yes, I've been through that. I sold a new vehicle I had during COVID at a crazy amount more than I even paid for it because they weren't around. And so the difference after it was paid off, they gave it to me in a check, and I put it in the bank, and I went to go take it all out to go buy another older vehicle, and they didn't want to give it to me. But it was like a back and forth. It went on and on. They were trying to say the check was fraudulent. It was like this whole thing. I'm like, it came from a car dealership down the street. You want to call them? Like, I mean, what are you talking about? Anyway, one of the other things that this goes back probably 15 years, and this is actually a funny one. My sister has a friend. She's an attorney, a really high-end attorney, and they have a lot of money. I mean, they can do whatever they want type of money. And they were going on vacation, and she went to go take, it was something over 5,000. I know back then it was like anything over 5,000. That's whenever they try to put up the roadblocks. But she went to go take something over that amount, and the lady asked her what it was for. And she said, hookers and blow. What's it matter to you? And it made me think, well, I wonder if they typed that in.
yes, they do. So, they do. They type that in. They'll put in that the customer gave a snide remark, such and such, or they'll put it like that. I'm not kidding. This was all news to me. I knew the banking and stuff was all kind of monitored and stuff, and that there are certain laws in place that they follow. But it's way too draconian. Like, you should be able to take your money out of your account whenever you
Yeah.
want for whatever reason without having to disclose to those people, those total strangers who just so happen to work there, as to what you're doing with your money. How is it
Yeah.
any of their business? It's not. And like, That's the whole thing. That's only part and parcel of what's going on. So what they want to do is they want to turn all of it into an entirely digital system, so that there's no hiding any money anywhere or anything like that. There's none of this where you could have freedom to do something that's not tracked or monitored. That's what they're worried about. They want to track and monitor every transaction from cradle to grave for each and every person. That's why they introduced the whole notion of cryptocurrency to the world, and they gave them that false thing to bite on. The whole thing that they came out with to try to push cryptocurrency is, oh, it's decentralized. Is it really? It's decentralized. That's what they claim. No, what it is it's still a centralized system, but it uses a decentralized utility. What it uses is nodes on a network to track transactions. I don't know if you guys are familiar with how blockchain works, but
I'm very vaguely, but I do.
every time somebody makes a transaction, that records a hash on the blockchain. And this hash could be tracked all the way back to as far back as the creation of the account with this. So they could track all through the course of time, backwards, forward, where this money went, when and how. Every action is recorded on the blockchain. So it doesn't lose any information in transit anywhere. So they know who bought what from whom. They know exactly where this all goes to. And this is all recorded on decentralized nodes. When I'm talking about nodes, it's recorded on somebody else's computer, essentially. Multiple computers. And these nodes have to agree at the transaction time with each individualized transaction. So that stores it as that hash on the blockchain so that it can be traced. And that's what it is. So they say it's decentralized, and yes, it's true. It's decentralized in that way. It's not a central utilized like control center or data center that collects all the information. The information is scattered across the entire network in different nodes. And this kind of reifies the validity of the information when it's recorded on multiple nodes as the same thing. That's how it comes to agreement on when this action took place on the chain. So this is what they put in place, and they claimed it's decentralized, and it's a way to get out of the current financial system and bypass that. Well, here's the big problem with cryptocurrency. Okay, it's decentralized in that way. How do you access it? You need
With a computer.
right. You need access to the computer and to the internet. Who controls your internet access? The gatekeepers of the internet access are the ones that actually can cut you off from your money if you go to a system like that. So it's not really decentralized. It's not a solution to any problem. You're not bypassing anything. And now they're making all of these like United States digital currency, USDC, and all of these different official ones, and they're buying up all the Bitcoin. And this is ultimately what's going to happen, because Bitcoin was put out there as the prototype for this. And you know how valuable Bitcoin is right now.
Right.
Well, eventually what's going to happen is the whole thing's going to start to tank. And what these government organizations will do is they'll make a deal with people. They will buy your Bitcoin for like double what the going rate is and give you that cryptocurrency in USDC, US digital currency, and buy up all the Bitcoin, because there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin. And they'll make it worth your while to give up your Bitcoin. And then once they have all the Bitcoin, then guess what? Your decentralized exchange platform is gone. And you'll have to use these official sources, these official channels, these official cryptocurrencies. It's the same kind of thing. It's a trap, and it's all just to get people used to the idea of digital exchanges. So that's what they did. They instituted this to get people hooked into that notion that somehow they're bucking the current financial system, and they're using this decentralized tool to make trades and exchanges and purchases and things like that, when it's not. It's all tracked and monitored, even more so than regular money at this point. And
I mean, of course it is. Of course it is. It's on a computer. And like you said, you need a computer and you need internet in order to access it. That's the gate. Those are the gates that allow you in. I mean, I have to tell you real quick, I remember when Bitcoin was first a thing, and I was working with a guy, he's super Bitcoin guy. I mean, like, he's trying to explain it to me with all this glee, and he's like, it's going to be great because, they can't tax it and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, you need like, what do you mean? Like, you're making written copies of it on a computer, and they're going to be able to. Have you met the NSA? You don't think they're going to be able to know where that went, when what you got for it, if they want to? And I think the most important thing is that we people. I understand the Bitcoin thing from their perspective. I get it. They want an alternative, and they felt like it was a good alternative. But ultimately, you have to think outside of that. What are you measuring it in? You're measuring its value in dollars, right? Like that's probably the most key important point, is that you're still actually using dollars, whether you think you are or not, because you're measuring it in that metric. Like, so, like, are you really getting away from it? Do you really think you're doing what you think that you're doing when you're using Bitcoin? I would say it's just sort of an illusion of freedom in the way that for you to be able to purchase and buy. They could stop you if they want to. And if you get too crazy, we've seen a guy, I'm blanking on his name. He's done a couple of interviews. He was like the guy, he made the Bitcoin logo. He made it, and they were the ones that got it off the ground. And he would have had, in essence, close to $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin. And the feds, like, without any real charges, he's been on house arrest for like 12 years. Like, and they won't give him a court hearing because there's nothing to actually charge him with. And they seized as much as they could off of him so that they could steal the Bitcoin. The feds did this so that they could just steal the Bitcoin. And then they told him he wasn't allowed to use a remote controller, like for a TV. He wasn't allowed to do that. He wasn't allowed to have a phone, and he wasn't allowed to have access to the internet while he was on house arrest. I mean, that should, in a nutshell, that should tell you what they're capable of when it comes to this. It's like, I think what you just said about them, this is sort of the hook, right? Like, here's your Bitcoin, and then once it gets a value, they'll be able to just start reeling you in, and they're going to say, well, it's going to be a crime if you use it, but we'll trade you for this. And then we're right back to dollars again anyway. So, I mean, I honestly, when you're going to be able to tell when it's really getting real is whenever they tell you can't barter, and they actually start enforcing it on a level that would be unforeseeable, because that would be the next step. When everything is digitized and has to be, barter is going to be a thing that they can't do much about, and they'll try to make it illegal.
Oh, they most certainly will, and you
Or
hit the
tax
nail
it.
on the head with that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
tax it.
They want to tax it.
I said they'll find a way to either tax it so they could get something out of bartering,
Yeah.
or if they can't actually implement a system where they can get something from it or track it or whatever, then they'll find a way to make it illegal or whatever.
They'll call it tax evasion. That's basically what it would come down to. They'll just, because that's an all-out catch. You're going to be able to reel in a whole bunch of people and say, you didn't pay taxes on that. I mean, how do they get mobsters now, right? Like, it's a tax. The funny part is the IRS doesn't even care if you're breaking laws. They just want their cut. They literally have a form that says if it's a criminal action, they want to know what and how much and give them their cut. Literally, like, there's a sheet for that, so that if you were trying to cover your ass on that end, you pay them, and then you don't have to worry about that charge if you're doing something. But I mean, ultimately, somebody could find out, right? I mean, but the point is that they don't care, man. They don't care. It's about control. It's always about control. And these data centers that they're building are, and I said it, and it sounds so dark and messed up, and like that there's no hope or whatever, but it's like, these are the walls of the prisons that they're building to control us. It's like the data centers are the walls of the prison. It's just fascinating to me how some people don't see it.
Yeah, that's absolutely what's going on in a nutshell right there. They want to switch everything over to digital. And I mean, we could talk about some solutions to this, simple common sense solutions.
Yes.
Because we, the people, have the power to implement those solutions amongst ourselves and not let this whole thing roll out the way that these controllers of this world want it to. So some simple solutions, like you were just saying there, Jason, is don't let them starve you out, first of all, right? Be self-sufficient in some way. And what does this look like? It may look a little different for people. Have about 3 weeks worth of storable foods around. Common sense things that you could do. Buy things of real value, real estate, land. If you own land, that's the most valuable commodity you could have. Gold and silver, physical gold and silver are also good if things go south. Good to have because they always maintain their value. Tools, skills, These things, learn how to grow your own food, learn how to hunt, learn how to can, learn how to operate off grid, learn how to live without electricity if the need should arrive. Have some backup plans. Like, for instance, I have a wood burning fireplace.
Me too.
So it's handy to have. I've wound up using it. There was a time probably about 15 years ago that we had some major flooding in the valley surrounding us, and the electricity was off for like 7 days. So I didn't have any electricity, so I'm glad I had the fireplace so I could heat the house and at least survive during that time. Now, thankfully, I had a generator, but shortly after I got the generator up and running, the power came back on because we didn't expect it to be out that long. We thought, okay, maybe it'll be out for a day or two. And I didn't want to have to go through the hassle of wiring the generator into the house and having to get all the gas and fight the lines at the gas stations and stuff that were open. And it was a big headache. But having just solutions like that, be able to like function off grid if you need to. Don't let them starve you out. That's the most important thing because that's what they're counting on. They want to be able to starve everybody out. But more common sense things we could use in the real world is we need to maintain a physical means of exchange, cash. Use cash, buy local. I know people will argue, but it's fiat currency. Well, yeah, it's fiat currency, but a digital currency is fiat currency. You don't want to go there. This, at least if you have a physical means of exchange, you could still do business. Like, look at the example of the flooding back in the Carolinas a while back here. They had businesses shut down, and people couldn't actually get any gas or anything like that because everything's all electronic. And like all of the retailers and everything's computerized, and the businesses can't function the old-fashioned way. You need to have cash. What good did it do people to have their electronic currency when they couldn't access the internet, or their credit card, they couldn't swipe their credit card to buy stuff? You needed cash. This is the important thing, because if you understand a little bit about how business works, especially small business, these businesses don't want to not be in business. They don't want to not have traffic coming in the doors and be actually making money. So to have them shut down for days at a time because there's no electricity or something doesn't make sense. That will drive your average business owner insane. So it's important as business owners and as people in general that you come up with contingency plans for if the power is out. Learn how to use maybe an old-fashioned cash register that doesn't require electricity. Do some basic math. Be able to maybe put price stickers on things so you could ring it up the old-fashioned way. And people could still come in and buy things they need, and you could still make money while the grid is down. It's practical things like this that we need to do. So we need to maintain that physical means of exchange, which means stop letting them get away with things like doing away with doing the penny. And that's where it all starts. They stopped making pennies now. Well, where does it go next? Well, eventually all the coinage is going to disappear, and then the digital money is going to start rolling in even more heavy at that point. So they want to make physical currency disappear. They want it all to be digital. But with physical currency, you could still operate when things go south. It doesn't do you a bit of good to have a credit card in hand if there's nothing operational electronic working in an area. And say that a business owner has storehouses of food or something sitting there that they want to sell before it goes bad or something like that, and they can't sell it because there's no electricity. Like, it doesn't make sense. Use cash. Use cash, buy local, simple things like that, just to try to keep things from going south in the way that these people want it to go. They want that total digital control because that's what it's about. So just simple things like that for the don't let them starve you out is the basic point. And that's something we could all do. We could make these small steps just to try to keep this thing from really setting up the way that they want it to. And
Well,
we have to oppose these data centers they're putting in the way that we've been doing, but like we need to go a little further, I guess, as far as get a little more vocal about it, the average person. Because by and large right now, it's just basically these city councils and stuff that are deciding for the people. And you see how they shut people down at these meetings if your average citizen shows up and wants to say something. So you need to start holding your local representatives accountable for their actions. And this is a big thing that's been missing in politics for too long in this country, is holding people accountable for the things that they do on our behest.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to add real quick that like all the points you made are valid. And so you wouldn't know this, but I'm an electrician and I actually work for a power company. And regardless of why the power goes out, if it goes out, all those things still apply. And just to put another point on it is that the grid itself is very, very, very old, and it takes a ton of maintenance to keep it up. And I seen during COVID, whenever all manufacturing shut down, they were running out of transformers. There used to be yards with full of them with hundreds and hundreds. Well, when they're not being replenished, this happens. We're entering a world now where, with all this stuff that's going on in the Middle East, fuel prices going up, availability of things going up, lubricant, or there's some Sam Clubs and Walmarts in the United States that can't get motor oil. And so I'm saying that as just some small examples, as regardless of, like this particular thing that adds to that we were talking about as far as AI and everything, it totally applies to like if that didn't exist. It's all still valid for all the same reasons, even if that didn't exist. This is just another thing that should make you think, have a backup plan, have a generator, have a way of producing your own food. Think about what happens if the lights go off and you can't get them back on. Because it doesn't have to be the apocalypse for the lights to go out. Somebody can take out a transformer with a car on a pole and you're out of power for X amount of time if they have the replacement transformer. All of it takes time. How long until the food in the fridge goes bad? I just wanted to add that because like I said, I shoehorn this stuff in because it's my wheelhouse every single time because it's important. And I feel like if I can get through to somebody, then, at least I'll have done something good with the time that I spent on here making videos, because I honestly think that that is the place to start. You have to think about what happens when the utilities would go off. What would you do? What would you do if there's not running water? I know a guy personally that works for a big city not far from here, and they were trying to hack them. The NSA and the FBI actually came to his location at work and started to put up all these security barriers. That's just outside hackers trying to affect the water. So my point is that like if these things go off, what would you do? You need to think about that, regardless of anything else that could happen. The apocalypse or a transformer blowing up, it's the same scenario as far as what would you do. So I just want to add that one in there. But there was something that it's a little bit of a turn, but I had to ask you about this. There's a lot of talk about the shots and what was in the shots and the role that they play into this and the possible nanotechnology that could have been implemented with those. Do you give that any merit, like as far as how it plays into everything that they're doing now? I mean, I'm at the point now where I understand that vaccines are poison. And I don't, it's hard for me to put into words, but like we have evidence, a mountain of evidence that says that. But I think the interesting part is that when some people can point out that like there's signals, like Bluetooth signals, coming from people that got the shot. Do you find any of that valid? Like, have you seen this yourself? Do you think it plays a role in what they're doing?
Most certainly does, and all those points you're making are valid, and all of this stuff has been documented by real researchers out there, a lot of independent researchers, but by and large, they don't get the time of day from mainstream academia or mainstream media, anything of the sort. But they've done experiments. There's one group of people, I can't remember all the specific details about it, but they did these tests where they were able to show, they took people out in the middle of the woods where there's no internet signal of any sort, nothing like this, and they tested them, and they were getting these Bluetooth signals, these MAC addresses that were appearing from people who are vaccinated. And I've looked and delved heavily into the vaccine topic through the years because I have vaccine-damaged children, and there's nothing that fires up the ire of a parent more than that. And I've seen too many things. I know too much about it. And these COVID shots, I was warning people from before they even came out that they were going to do this. You could look at my 2017 book, The Alchemical Tech Revolution, where I told people, hey, they're going to use vaccines as a vector for getting this nanotech in your body. And sure enough, it's been documented. They've been finding graphene in some of these vaccine vials and stuff like that. That has no place being there except for the use as a means of transmitting and receiving signals. So we have all of this going on, and plus you factor in the component of them building the 5G network as they were rolling this out as well, and it all begins to play a certain role in that. Plus, I don't know if you remember, there were people claiming that if you take a magnet and it would stick to your arm where you got the shot. Did you hear
Yeah,
about
I did. I did.
that? I know people personally that were able to attest to that. So,
Really?
yeah, who got the shot, and sure enough, a magnet stuck to their arm where they got the shot. So that tells me there's something going on with that. So there is evidence at play to show that they have been using this as a vector for getting people sort of wired to the grid. And that's what this is all leading to. This is all part of the transhumanist rollout of things. And most people don't have a clue what transhumanism is. That's by and large my experience. I've been talking about transhumanism publicly since 2017. And most people don't have a clue what you're even talking about when you mention the term transhumanism. So how do you begin with that? It turns into a lengthy conversation that most people don't want to hear about. So I have people like, even I go to church or something. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an author and a podcast host. Oh, well, what do you write about? Transhumanism. Transhumanism? What's that? They don't know, or they confuse it with transgenderism, and they're telling me all about. And transgenderism is just a stepping stone to transhumanism, by the way. It's all part and parcel of the same ideology going on, same thing going on. So when you have all of this going on, and you see the tying in of these AI data centers, and then you have all of this stuff that they rolled out with the COVID scamdemic and everything else, you begin to see the building blocks of all of this. It's about developing nano networks, bio nano networks within people, and that's essentially what this is all about. And there's a topic called wireless body area network, if you're familiar with that, WBAN. People could look that up. I've done some broadcasts talking about that as well. So they could actually monitor conditions in your body using wireless body area network. And I think this is a vector for them doing that, getting more precision types of readings and sensors for that is by using the vaccine vector as a way to do so. So with this wireless body area network, they could monitor your heart rate, your blood pressure, all of this stuff wirelessly and without you even knowing, without your knowledge or consent. And they could track you. And they have detailed dossiers as to your body movements and your mannerisms and stuff like that. And they could even make an individualized heartbeat detector that sort of what's the term I'm looking for? They could identify you specifically by that. Everyone has an intrinsic biofield that's unique. So they could identify your unique biofield. So this goes way beyond facial recognition too. This technology all exists. It's real stuff. There's papers and all.
I just looked up WBAN and I'm seeing exactly what you're saying about all this stuff that they want to do with it, and you can tell that it's sort of a whitewashed version of it to not scare people. Like the potential for what you could actually do with this it's readable even though they're not saying it. Hold on.
I got a question. I got a question for you, Wayne.
Go ahead.
In regards to the 5G stuff, I remember when 4G was the newest thing, and then 5G, and I was reading all these stories about workers who were installing the towers and people who live nearby getting sick and brain cancer and all this other stuff, and now this new G6. Do we feel like what's the legitimacy to this invisible electromagnetic radiation these devices are giving off and the effects cognitively they're having on people? From don't sleep with the phone next to you to just all these things that are kind of like surface level concerns about these new technologies of wireless radio waves. What do you think about that?
Well, we live in a microwave soup at this point with all the different frequencies and stuff we're hit with, and it does have a very real effect on people. There's actually been government studies and military studies done on this. One you could look up is called Project Pandora. Uh, this actually talks about how they could weaponize frequency in this way. They could use these types of frequencies to affect people's behavior and their health. This is all something that could be done, and there's an entire area of science called digital biology that people largely are unaware of. It's a real thing. They could actually influence your biology wirelessly with some of these frequency bands. And here's the thing about 5G, and this is the concerning part. When they first started rolling out the 5G, I was looking at this pretty heavily at that point. You find that this technology it works slightly different. See, the 5G band works slightly differently than like the 4G band in the previous bands that we're used to. It uses what's called millimeter waves. So using these millimeter waves was concerning because this was actually used in military tech called the active denial system. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. They've used it over in the Middle East. What it is, it's a big dish they set on top of a truck, and if they're having problems with crowd control or something, they point the dish at the crowd and they rack up the frequency to, I think it's 90 megahertz or 60 megahertz or something like that. I don't remember what the exact frequency is, but if they ramp the frequency up to that and point it at them, then the people will scramble because it feels like they're burning alive. So they have to get out of that area. This is the same technology 5G is based on.
Wow.
So
I've actually seen that in work before. Like there was a G20 summit in Pittsburgh. I used to live in Pittsburgh, and I seen them roll that out on the back of a decommissioned MRAP. They were pushing the people back, and I could tell that they had used it, but I didn't see them use it just from the people's reaction when it was aimed at them. So, I mean, I've seen that real life myself on the streets of Pittsburgh before. It was actually kind of crazy because I had just been walking by. I didn't even know what it was about. I turned the corner, and there's crowds of protesters, and then an MRAP with this satellite dish on the top of it, aiming it at them, and they're like trying to dodge it. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. Like, you just walk around the corner, and all of a sudden it's like a riot. But I mean, I've seen that. And they also talked about when Trump went into Venezuela, they used something similar on the Venezuelan government officials where like the discombobulator, I believe he called it, something like that. I assume it's a better tech than anything we had ever seen before. I can only imagine what it's capable of.
And this is the whole thing. That's why they're trying to get all of these different frequency antennas in place all over the place. This is what the big concern was with 5G, because if you looked at how 5G operates, their main concern was they needed to put a whole lot of these 5G nodes everywhere because it only had a very short range. That was their major concern at the time. So now, as we ramp up to the next levels of things, 6G, and they're working on 10G systems in some places, by the way, when we get into those are broader spectrum, and they can also be tuned to very specific type frequencies to affect people in certain ways. Even 5G and 4G were capable of this. That Project Pandora I told you about, this whole thing did a study based upon this, where if they tuned to certain frequencies, they could affect people's moods. So they could incite a riot using nothing more than radio frequencies like this. So all they have to do with all these 5G antennas and stuff in place is, let's tweak the frequency in this city, and we'll make the people go nuts. This will cause an increase in crime. It'll make people protest. It'll make people angry, irritated. We could make them sad. We could make them. They could affect their mood in many different ways with this. Not just their mood, but their physical health as well. They could emulate symptoms, illness symptoms, like all of the symptoms that were associated with COVID, using only frequencies. Like I said, it's a whole science called digital biology that most people don't have the first clue about. But it's a real thing, and they've used it in the past, I assure you. Remember, in the early days of COVID, it was only primarily a lot of the big cities where people were seeing massive case counts and stuff of this stuff, like New York and places like that. So was that what they were doing? Because these were the early places where they started rolling out the new networks. the new wireless networks. It's in the bigger cities first.
I
So is
mean,
that what we're doing? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. It's speculation. A lot of people have speculated as to that, but I can tell you the science is out there that shows that they can do that. They can produce symptoms in people consistent with certain illnesses simply by inundating them with certain frequencies. So this is a real thing. And that Project Pandora, that was a military project, I think took place in the early 1960s, late 1950s. So they've known about this for a long time. And previous, they were using something called Gwen towers to do very similar things. If you've ever looked into the subject called targeted individuals, you might have learned a little something about Gwen towers. These were like the predecessors to any type of cell phone type technology. These are the like radio transmitters and things like that. So, and they still exist, by the way. They're still out there. There's a lot of Glen towers out there. That's another thing. If anybody's interested in researching the topic in depth, there's a lot you can find about it.
I mean, honestly, let's think about like I mean, EMF is everywhere, like everywhere. Anything with an electrical current is producing EMF. Power lines are producing EMF. And then you factor in cell phones. Like, you can't hold a cell phone to your ear too long without your face getting hot and your ear getting hot. I mean, these frequencies are everywhere. So to not recognize that it's going to be weaponized and can be weaponized is just, I mean, I don't know. Some people you'll never break through to, but for anybody that's on the fence about the idea that it's even possible, of course it's weaponized. Of course they exist, and of course it's weaponized. It's just a matter of scale, and what for is the only real questions that's left. But it makes me. We're coming up just past the hour, and I wanted to ask you about what do you think the most important piece of information that we could share about this? Because, look, Neuralink is transhumanism, right? I mean, I think most people could agree with that. Some people that just want to be on board with it, they won't recognize it, but it's part of it. It's the beginning of what would be that. So like we can sort of see its rise in a way, where it's coming from, what the intentions are, how they're going to sell it to you. But what would you say, like, the most important piece of information there is to basically know about this that somebody might be unaware of? Like, we got these data centers going up. Their ultimate goal is some kind of transhumanism. They want to control. They want to lower the population. I mean, they give out awards for this, and then the same guys push vaccines. So, like, but I mean, what would you say that maybe somebody wouldn't know or wasn't aware of would be like maybe a key piece of information about this subject?
Oh, there's so many things to cover about it, and we didn't even touch on the spiritual concerns about it yet.
Right.
That's where I primarily focus. They're trying to separate the spirit out of everything. They want everybody bought into this hyper physical, hyper materialist paradigm. They want people to believe that everything, inclusive of consciousness itself, could be explained away as some physical cause and effect sequence in this material reality we experience with our five senses, and nothing could be further from the truth. So they're trying to separate the spirit from man. They want to separate all of it into this physical divide. And this is how they explain things. So ultimately, this is the premise they want people to believe. They want you to believe that your consciousness, the I am within man, the individuated self, the ego, however you want to term this, is nothing more than a byproduct of the electrochemical activity of your brain and brainstem. And that's not true.
Mm-mm.
I can tell you that that is not true from all the things I've known and studied and researched through the years and looking back at all the occult sciences. But that's what they want you to believe. And if they could get you to believe that, then they have their foothold in the door to get you to buy into the transhumanist theme that they have in mind for us. They want you to believe that this physical reality is all that there is, and there's nothing beyond this. There's no spirits beyond this, spiritual concern, anything like that. That your consciousness is just the byproduct of your brain and brainstem's activity. And if that's true, and this is the big if that they dangle over people's heads, If that's true, if your consciousness is nothing more than the byproduct of some physical process in the human body, then it can be duplicated via algorithm, and therefore your consciousness can be transferred into a machine, uploaded to the net, and you can live forever in some digital format. You could take on a multi-bodied experience. You could live in whatever container that you want to live in. This is the promise of transhumanism, and it's all a lie. Because what transhumanism really is revealed to you by transhumanists themselves. There's a pro-transhumanist YouTube channel out there called Transhumania. On this channel, they have several documentaries, all long documentaries, but one of the documentaries on there is about a 4.5 hour long documentary. And in this documentary, about 20 minutes in, it tells you in no uncertain terms what transhumanism really is, and they even put it up in words on the screen. I screenshotted this years ago when I first found it because my jaw nearly dropped when I saw it. They tell you that transhumanism is eugenics without coercion. That's
Holy crap.
exactly what they tell you. And these are pro-transhumanists. It's eugenics without coercion. That's what their
Wow.
ultimate goal is. So if there's something important people want to take away, that's it right there. Because I've been talking about this stuff publicly since 2017 now. My jaw nearly hit the floor when I saw that, when I watched that documentary that they did, because they were approaching this whole transhumanist notion of things as this positive evolution of mankind to his next state. This is about the post-human era. That's what they're trying to build right now. And
I'm really glad you brought that point up, because we focus a lot on the spiritual aspects of the world as well. And like what I think ultimately is happening is that what they're trying to invoke is some kind of evil entity. Some people call it demons, angels and demons, or to me it's not relevant yet exactly what it is. But I think a lot of this comes at its source, the ideas in technology, is it's some kind of manipulation from some kind of evil entity that is giving people the ideas of ye will be like gods. Because that's a theme that continues to come up when this stuff happens, is that they don't want to die. They want to rule over everybody. They want ultimate control. And where are these ideas coming from? So I'm really glad you brought that point up, because I really do think that might be the most important point of the whole thing, is that ultimately that's what I believe is happening, is that they're in league with something. Something's planting these ideas, the whispers in their heads about how if you do this, you'll be godlike. And, all the same people, all they're trying to do is figure out ways not to die. That it's a constant, never-ending. There's one sick bastard that I don't want to get too vulgar, but like he does crazy stuff, like his kids' blood infusions and like all kinds of crazy stuff involved with that. And he's one of these people that would be pushing this stuff. So I just wanted to say I'm really glad you brought that point up, because I really do think that might be the most important part.
I agree. That is the most important part. It's a spiritual battle at the end of the day. That is
Yes.
the most important underlying current to all of this. Because what transhumanism really is it's the great lie from the Garden of Eden, as you said. You can be as gods. That's what the great lie is. And that's what transhumanism is promising people. It's promising them, first of all, immortality. And second of all, control over everything. And it's all based in fraud and deceit and lies. It is the great lie from the Garden of Eden. And in my view, this is exactly what they're trying to build right now, is what I call the Antichrist system. The Antichrist is not going to be a human being, an individual, in the way that we would think of. In my view, the Antichrist, as described in a lot of the biblical cosmology and the concept that's approached by most theologians, it's going to be the first fruits of the transhumanist movement. That's what it's going to be, because if you look back and you look in the scriptures and you see when it talks about, when you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, understand, well, what is this talking about, this abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet in the book of Daniel and referenced later on in the book of Revelation? What this is referencing is this is when the Antichrist is said to enter the temple and stand up in the temple and declare himself God.
Hmm.
So, how most of the theologians and the mainstream Christian scholarship perceives this and actually interprets it is, first of all, they're going to rebuild this physical temple in Jerusalem, and they're going to reinstitute all of the old Jewish rites of sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and everything like that. I've heard it 1,000 times, heard it 1,000,000 times. This is what they believe, and this is what they're looking for. I think they're missing the connection and the point. They're looking in the wrong place. They're looking at the wrong thing. They're looking at a literal interpretation that is not actually what's being presented. Because if you look in other portions of the Bible, where is the temple of God? Know ye not that ye are the temple of God? The human being, the human
Hmm.
body, is the temple of God. So when you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, what's the holy place? Man. This is a spirit that does not belong in man. So when you have this Antichrist spirit within man declaring himself God, that is the true Antichrist. And I think that this is all part of this greater beast system as described in the Bible with the mark to buy and sell and everything else. That's what this artificial intelligence rollout is all about. And at the backside of it, in the spiritual concerns of things, there's dark forces at play.
Yeah.
This is largely what I've come to discover through my years of intense study and deep research into these things. And it's just massively concerning because it's a spiritual battle at the end of the day, and they want us completely separated from spirit. They don't want us to understand what they're doing. This is by and large how these people who've positioned themselves into these positions of power in this world have operated for a long time. They use different types of energetic principles to manipulate and control us that we don't understand. They use the old occult sciences to do so. And they've trained us, indoctrinated us to think of those things as being silly or nonsensical.
Right.
And this is where we're at. So they would rather you think it's all nonsense, that there's nothing to any of that stuff, and to think that's backwards and archaic ways of thinking. But at the end of the day, they're leveraging these principles that they know more about than you do against you to steer people into certain directions in this society and culture. And it all has to do with developing this control grid. I call it a total panopticon digital control grid because that's what it is. They're building more than just AI data centers, okay? This is only the small first steps infrastructure into building this beast system, which is totally all-encompassing and actually is going to be used to transform the entirety of our physical reality, not just man himself, man as a part of it, into the post-human era. This is what they call it. Humanity 2.0, H2. They have different names for it in the transhumanist community, and it's all based on this premise. They say it's the next step in human evolution, and it's what they call self-guided evolution. So it's all about man merging with his technology to become godlike. And this is what they're trying to build and trying to accomplish. And the spiritual concerns that go along with this have been talked about in different of the occult systems for a very long time. You see, the roots of transhumanism go all the way back as far in history as we could look. It's the fulfillment of what many are calling the great work. It's an inverted and twisted and perverted great work that they've been looking for. Many of these occultists have turned to the dark side, and they want to maintain control and power for themselves, and they want to elevate themselves to this level of godhood. They call it an apotheosis in the old systems. This is what transhumanism is. It's the promise of apotheosis, using our modern technologies to get there. That's what they're trying to build. That's what they're trying to accomplish for themselves. And here's the big secret to all of it. They have no place in their new world order, their new age, for the profane, and that's you and I. If you're
Right.
not part of their big club, you're profane. You don't belong. They don't intend for any of us to reap the benefits of these new technologies they're building. That's only for the elite. That's only for the select few that advance to the next stage. The rest of us are all just cannon fodder, essentially, for the most part, in their view. But they'll try to sell you this in the positive ways. They'll tell you that some of these transhumanist technologies can be used to perform these medical miracles, like the Neuralink that you've talked about, for example. Well, they could use that to help paralyze people to walk again. Sounds great, right? That's not what their intention is with it. That's not going to be for you and me. But that's how they sell it, because they need useful idiots to actually develop it. You see, they vampirize
Yes.
the energies and the intelligences and the wealth and the resources and the labor of the masses to get what they want. So they'll start throwing funding to many of these scientists working on these technologies who maybe have good intentions and they think they're doing something positive and great, but ultimately that's not what the controllers of the development of the technology want. And you see this, for example, within the auspices of the military-industrial complex, the special access programs. They only want certain things built a certain way, and first and foremost, they want every weaponized way to use it developed before it goes out for public consumption. All of these technologies we see in our reality right now are what's called dual-use technology. First, it's been developed and pushed to its limits within the auspices of the special access programs within the military-industrial complex. And then it's later ported out and rolled over to corporate America for public usages, for consumer uses. Cell phone, perfect example. This is
Yep.
a military technology. These were developed in the 1960s. They had this in the 1960s. They didn't have the massive networks in place at that point, but they knew what they could do with it. So they developed these, and now you walk around, you're tracked, you're monitored. It even reads your thoughts. Most people don't know that. There's technology called optogenetics. It's a whole science. You look at the blue light in the screen, it could actually read some of your on your optic nerve, some of the impulses on your optic nerve, and know what you're thinking about. Facebook developed an algorithm with this way back in 2018, 2017. I did a conference in New York in 2019 talking about this, and I heard people audibly gasp in the audience when I told them that this thing can read your mind. Your phone can read your mind and target ads at you. And
Yep.
you'll hear people always say, I didn't even talk about it, I didn't mention it, but I thought about something and then I saw an ad for it. There's a reason for that. That's how developed these technologies are right now, today. And most people are in denial about that. I have a lot of people that deny the existence of nanotechnology too. They say it's nonsense because you can't see it. Well, because you can't see it doesn't make it nonsense. There's a lot of things we can't see. You can't see the radio frequencies around you, but you know they're there. You can't see the air, but you know it's there because you can feel the effects of it. So most certainly, denying the existence of something is not helpful in any way, shape, or form. That's what these people leverage against us all the time because they know they could create this infighting between people when we're talking about this kind of stuff. But most certainly these things exist, these technologies are being wielded against us, and it all has a much darker agenda behind it, and it is a spiritual agenda. And I sincerely believe, and I'm almost 100% positive, there's non-human intelligences involved in the promulgation of all of this stuff that influence a lot of people in positions of power in this world.
So let me just add real quick. Every time a subject like this comes up, as far as what this is going to do, my mind always reverts back to verses in the Bible where it speaks about the corruption of the flesh. And it attributes that corruption of the flesh to Nephilim, like having this knowledge that they corrupted men and beasts at a large scale. And when God found out that this was happening at this scale, that's when he flooded the earth. At least that's a very nuanced understanding, 30,000 foot view of how to explain how the red flags go up whenever I hear this. Because when I refer back to that in my mind, I'm thinking, this sounds like a corruption of the flesh to me. If you're going to go in and manipulate the body, whether it's mRNA, DNA sequences changed, putting tech into your body that allows you to do things that you couldn't do. I mean, there's always stories about them splicing with to make chimeric creatures and things like that. But it also makes me think about, and I think we could probably get close to closing on this. I'd like to get your input on how you think this alien disclosure plays into this type of thing, because my gut tells me that it's a fraud, they're lying, and it's going to be used in some way to get people to do things. And we have a somewhat of a saying on the show: aliens are demons. It's a very simple way of explaining how I kind of see what they potentially could be. Now, I don't know if they're actually going to show physical aliens, but I think that they're going to use it to force people into something. What do you think that role is like? Whenever, because they're trying to push it everywhere now as a distraction for a bunch of other things, but they're putting it at the forefront for a reason. What do you think that might be?
Well, as I've alluded to, there is a non-human intelligence that does seem to have an awful lot of input into the things that are happening in the world right now. Now, I find this largely to be spiritual intelligence, as many things on the dark side of things that influence things in a lot of ways. Now, does that mean that extraterrestrials or aliens from other planets or something don't exist? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I think the phenomenon that we see related to UFOs and what they're calling alien disclosure and stuff like that may be related, and it goes across the bounds of all different things, that there's a combination of different factors. But by and large, what we can know for certain about all of it is it's rooted in deception and lies and manipulation, and most certainly they do intend to use it to change the image of man within this world. And this is a massively important thing. And you could look up an old Stanford Institute research paper called Changing Images of Man that was performed back in the late 1970s. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to change man's image of himself and his place in this universe. So they're trying to transform how we think about ourselves. So they're trying to shift us away from thinking in terms of religious or spiritual contexts into thinking strictly in physical, material world terms. So they handed us ideas like Darwinian evolution, which is a perversion of a much older occult concept, which has to do with spiritual evolution of mankind, spiritual advancement. And they've turned it into something strictly physical. They do this all the time. That's what Darwinian evolution is. It's this physical representation of something that was once a very nuanced spiritual view, a spiritual thing. They do this with all different facets of things. It's all about transforming man's attitude as to who he is and what his place is in this world and in this universe. That's why they hand us other things like the Big Bang Theory, to try to explain God out of the equation, explain the spirit out of everything. Because what they are in fact trying to build is something that the Hermeticists call the world of shells. Something that Rudolf Steiner refers to as the eighth sphere. And I encourage everybody, go look up these terms. And you will be absolutely shocked at what you find about this. Essentially, they want to build a strictly physical paradigm that bypasses all connection to the spiritual in any way, shape, or form. They want to turn you into essentially an automaton, a drone, a collective hive mind consciousness controlled by the AI. And there's only one entity that emerges at the end that controls all of humanity in that sense, or post-humanity, because that's what you'll be if you buy into that. So essentially, what the promise of transhumanism is you could live forever. You could upload your consciousness into the machine, and we could transfer your consciousness into any type of container you want. You could have like a robot body. You could, go in. You could be a dog for a day if you want. You could do all this. You could live in a digital world, and you could be godlike and have absolute total control over everything and live forever. And that's a lie. Because what they're really going to do is they're going to cull you. This is the great culling in disguise, transhumanism. Once they get everybody bought into that idea that they could transfer their consciousness into a machine, then you'll see people begin to line up to do this. Because it sounds attractive. And it sounds like a positive step forward. So when they convince enough people that your dead relative is still alive in the computer, and look at some of the things that have come about in recent years about this, like social media and stuff like that. If they could convince enough people your dead relative is still alive in the computer and interacting with you and stuff like that, that's them, well, then they'll get enough people to maybe buy into the notion that they could upload their consciousness to the machine, and in fact, they're just being euthanized. This is where it's going. This is the stark reality that we're being faced with. That is not the ontological self, the I am within man, the essence of who you are, that spirit in that machine. Now, the artificial intelligence and the computers could make a very convincing, cheap knockoff, an imitation of you and your personality and your likes and dislikes and this kind of thing, but it's not you. So any type of a consciousness they present to you in that way, and they say this computer is sentient, or this is your dead relative's soul uploaded into the machine, that's all false. And they're going to convince enough people to cull the masses. They've talked about this great culling for a long, long time. And this is how they'll get people to do it. They'll get people to pay for it, too.
Yeah.
It's the other thing. And if you think that's a bridge too far, stick around a couple of years, because I'm telling you, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build this world of shells, this eighth sphere reality that's totally devoid of spiritual connection in any way, shape, or form. It's all a dead entity, and this is essentially what we see around us. This whole world that we live in right now, this corporate structure that's come about, that we acknowledge in Western culture, is all based on these death-based ideals. Even our language has been weaponized against us. Think of corporation. What's the root word of corporation? Corpse. It's dead entity. That's what they're trying to ultimately build, is a dead world, devoid of spirit whatsoever. And that's where we're at. Michael Hoffman describes this as the reign of dead matter. And he couldn't be any more correct. This is what they're trying to build.
Wow.
So,
I got
all of that idea. And look at all the other, things that we have going on, like your driver's license. That's your straw man identity, and all capital letters on there. It's a corporate fiction, a legal fiction, a dead entity. You see, they've slowly been indoctrinating the minds of the masses to accept this dead entity system, and this building of this new beast system with all of this AI and these artificial realities around everybody is the ultimate fugazi of the natural world we live in. That's what they're trying to do, change the whole reality as well.
Wayne, I got one more question for you, because obviously everything we talked about in the show tonight, all these, behind the scenes things that people have been, these evil people have been planning. This is stuff that's been in the works and has been planned for many, many years, decades upon decades. This isn't something they just came up with a decade ago. And you mentioned earlier things like, people's 401ks are going to disappear and dry out, and they want to implement the social credit system. And then, this new biotech way of, do you see, because I'm trying to establish a realistic timeline, I guess is my question, because these things have been in place since long before our parents or grandparents have been born. Do you see to what point in our lifetime, do you see okay, within 5 to 10 years, or, some of this stuff is obviously decades out, and then some of it is probably more realistic that we'll see in our lifetime? Do you have kind of a sense from all your research and studies of what we're looking at in timeline wise for some of these things, or how do you kind of feel about that?
Well, I've heard a lot of different numbers thrown around with a lot of this stuff, but I could just tell you what the supposed experts in the whole transhumanist technology thing are talking about, what they're saying. Like, for instance, Ray Kurzweil predicts that by the year 2049 at the latest, we'll have seen the singularity, which this will be the first fruits of the transhumanist movement, the first fruits of the transhuman new age, or the post-human. So when that happens, I mean, I can't say for sure what exactly it's all going to look like. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But these are just the things that the experts in this field are saying, that they're predicting that by then, that we're going to see this advent, these massive changes in humanity and the post-human era upon us. And like I had alluded to earlier, how the buildup for that works is first through transforming the medical model that we have. That's what was so important about this whole rollout of the scamdemic back in 2020, and how it's transforming our medical system today. You'll notice everything's gone to electronic records now. And they have pretty much a medical dossier on you. And this is all going to be attached to a centralized utility at some point in the very near future. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to transform the medical model from what they would call symptom management, which is what they do right now. They don't really cure anything, they just manage symptoms. So it's going to go from a symptom management type of a modality to an augmentation modality. This is where all the transhumanist stuff comes in, where they've already had ethics papers and stuff put out about this, where if they can say somebody's crippled and they could, through the use of Neuralink, or I'll just use that as an example, or some technology like that, if they could restore function and actually give them beyond normal human function in their limbs or something, give them maybe superhuman human strength or enhanced strength or something like that, if they could do that for the disabled person, wouldn't it stand to reason that it would be ethically moral to offer that to people who aren't disabled in that way? This is what they're trying to normalize in that way. So they're going to offer these augmentations to regular people through the medical system. And of course, this will all be mitigated through the insurance companies and stuff like that. They have whole entire white papers and think tank proposals talking about the medical enhancement system. So I have a lot of this stuff, by the way, posted in my ATR digital library on my website for my members over there, too. They could read for themselves some of the sources that I quote from when I'm talking about this stuff. So it's all about transforming the medical system into this augmentation type modality from what it is right now. So they're promising through these different transhumanist technologies and developments that they'll be able to cure pretty much everything, all the infirmities at some point, inclusive of aging and dying. So if they could offer that to people and they could give them this option to augment themselves, enhance their cognitive function, you don't have to go to school anymore. This has all been talked about. This is actually in a NASA paper going back to 2001, before 9/11, that talked about a lot of this stuff. It talked about future warfare year 2025. People could look that up too. Talked about where at some point in the near future, what they see being feasible is you can learn instantaneously, just through instantaneous information transfer into your brain. So you won't need to go to school anymore. They'll just upload whatever information you need, like it was presented in the movie The Matrix. And you can learn that way. This is all based upon real technologies. So
That was the first thing I thought of, was the Matrix. That was as soon as you said that, it was the very first thing I thought of.
that's all based in real tech. What did the writers of The Matrix know about that we don't? Think about it.
Hollywood in general knows a lot that they are passing as fiction. Yeah. So is there a way, do you feel that humanity has a shot of being able to avert this coming apocalypse? Or is it kind of just maybe we could hold it off for a longer period of time, but it's inevitably going to happen? What are your thoughts on that, I guess?
I have an awful lot of hope, because here's the thing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to individual choices, and you can choose to participate or not. So each and every one of us, it's incumbent upon us to make a choice. We're coming to a crossroads, and we need to make that decision. Are we going to go down this world of shells, eighth sphere physical paradigm where we're collectively bought into the hive mind and we're just basically an automaton at that point with no individuality or anything of that sort, and our individual self gone and nothing but a physical shell? Or are we going to turn the other way and go the spiritual path and achieve what our full potential is as human beings? And each of us has to make that choice. So there's going to be a schism in society in the coming future. I see this as being almost unavoidable, because you're always going to have those people that go along to get along and just will do whatever they're told and go along with this whole system and seem to find it attractive to maybe be able to sit in their lounge chair or something with their virtual reality glasses and drool at the screen all day and this kind of thing, and live vicariously through a digital avatar or something like that, and think that that's living in an advancement and this kind of thing. Or you're going to have those that are looking to get back to maybe some more natural ways of doing things. being what we were truly intended to be as human beings. So ultimately, it's in there in all the science fiction and everything too. Look at the book, The Time Machine, talks about this split between what were they called, the Morlocks or something, and there was this division in humanity where you had the smart ones went underground and lived there and with the hive mind, and then you had the surface dwellers who were kind of just the primitive backwards humans. They presented it kind of opposite of what it would really look like when we make the decision one way or the other. But each of us has a choice, because everything offered in this world is just that. It's an offer. You have the ability to reject the offer or accept the offer. This works on the free will principle, and this is one of the most important gifts our Creator gave us, is free will. So if you use your free will to reject whatever they're offering you, then you don't have to participate in that. You don't have to take part in that. You don't have to have that as your future. Now, they might try to make it as uncomfortable as possible for you, and like I said, the whole COVID scamdemic they rolled out on the world was a perfect prerequisite or precursor to all of this stuff coming. Really showed people's true colors. They made it uncomfortable. I don't know how many times I got thrown out of stores for not wearing a mask.
Me too.
I don't know how many times. Like, I've had people say snide things to me, ask me my vaccination status, and I say it's none of your business. Oh, then you're not vaccinated then. It's like things like that. It brings out the ugly in people. But this is what we're looking at. They could make it as uncomfortable as possible for you to not accept the offer or participate. But if you stand your ground, ultimately, they have no power over you anymore. And that's the important thing. And that's where this is an individual decision we all need to make. And it is a spiritual battle. And we need to stand our ground. We need to decide where our line in the sand is and hold our ground there. That line in the sand came for me back in 2020. And I've stood
Me
around
too.
it.
Me too. I fought tooth and nail. Let me just add this real quick. I fought tooth and nail during COVID. It shined a light on the madness that people will believe with no evidence at all. And if anybody in the chat has any questions for Wayne, put them in there, and I'll see if he wants to answer any of them before we get out of here, because I've already felt like we've held on to him a little bit too long. But I think COVID showed them just how many people would fall in line with the most ridiculous things with the total lack of evidence that they would just go and do it. And I think that shows you how capable they can actually be.
Yeah, my favorite was the arrows on the floor in the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah.
I purposely would walk
6 feet apart and
those
stickers
arrows
on
when
the
I was
floor.
in there.
Yeah, they're still there in some stores. They got the stickers on the floor, like stand here. Then they measured them 6 feet out. Somebody can be at the next sticker, and I'm like,
That was the most retarded stuff ever. Oh,
Yeah.
there's a reason they did that 6 feet distancing, by the way, because the human biofield on average extends out 3 feet. So if you have people's biofields not overlapping, that kind of creates this division among them. It's all about this dehumanization of people. So that's one of the occult reasons they did the 6 foot distancing, even though they had no scientific basis for any of it. There's always the occult involved in these things. Always, always, always. As much as I don't want it to be there, everything I've ever looked at, you always find the occult. It's ever present. And that's one of the things that was present with that. And the same thing with the mask. That's covering your breath. Your breath is your spirit in the old systems. It's basically showing people that you don't have a spirit, that you're dividing yourself from your spirit. You're willing to do that. See, it's all of these things. They affect the unconscious human mind in a lot of ways people don't perceive on a conscious level. But it's there. It's an archetype that affects your behavior and affects you. And that is exactly what they leveraged against us during all of that. But you try to tell people that while it was going on, and it was like, you're a grandma killer. It's like
My daughter was born during COVID, and I'll tell you that was an experience. If it wasn't enough to see everything that I had seen, that was an experience just listening to these quote unquote educated people try to tell you and make you believe some of the most ridiculous arguments that like you can just point out and say those masks don't work. They're for spit. They've always been for spit, and you know that. But I don't. So like I don't know why you're thinking that it's going to stop a virus, because you have to kind of put it on their level for them to be able to grasp it. And the blank stare that you will get repeatedly from them is telling, because they're not thinking. They're sort of like wind up dolls, and a lot of people are like this, where like they get their marching orders. They're just, this is the answer. For everyone to stay safe, we need to wear masks, and everyone needs to get vaccinated. And I say, they apparently just made the vaccine 5 minutes ago, and they said it's safe for everybody. I know that's a lie, because everybody can't take aspirin. So you can't tell me that you can't take the thing that you just made and everybody would be okay. So I'm not taking that. And these masks that you're proclaiming don't work. And by your logic, if you took the vaccine, why should I have to? Like, that's what, and like you look at them, you're safe, right? So like, why does it matter what I do? Yeah. And so like when in the blank stares that you get from these professional, educated doctors, nurses, everybody, and they just get angry. Like, that's the craziest reaction I've ever seen. Pure anger. They wanted to throw me out of the hospital. They had this big meeting. My daughter's a newborn, and she had a heart condition and needed a surgery at like day 2. And they were talking about trying to throw me out of the hospital. And so, like, they get me in a room full of people. They're like, well, because you're being combative. I'm like, you're telling me I need to take a vaccine and wear a mask all day in order to come see my doctor or daughter. I'm not doing that. And nothing you are going to say is going to make me do that. Well, if you continue this, sir, like, we're not going to be able to let you come in here. And I said, listen, I'm going to put this on you. I will come to see my daughter. I will get her treatment for her thing, whether that's with your help or anybody else's help. I'll take her out of here and take her somewhere else if I have to. That's up to you. And like, they weren't ready for people to call their bluff, like, because that's all that it is. The entire thing is a bluff. Like, they want you to comply, and when you don't, they don't have an answer for it, because none of their arguments are logical and backed up by any evidence at all during the entire thing. And yes, I got thrown out of many, many, many places for not wearing a mask, because somebody has to say no. Right? Owen Benjamin's great for this. The real N word is no. Like, just tell them no and watch them snap out. Like, I mean, because that's all, they can't take it. They can't, because they really can't make you. But what they will do is what we talked about earlier, which is use leverage points to make you do a thing that you don't want to do. And so, like, you can use that to see what they would do in the future if they do want you to be part of this digitized world that slowly reaches into the physical to make you do things. So ultimately, that's why I always come back to self-sufficiency, right? Unplug, grow your own food, produce your own power if you need power. Remember that there was a way that people actually thrived without it. Without all of this, people actually thrived. So keep that in mind, that like, you don't need it. You want it, and you're going to sacrifice to get it if you do it. So, I mean, I just wanted to, I want to put that in there, because I can't stress this part enough. People have become so comfortable and soft with the conditions that we live in today that they do not want to give it up at any cost. Whether it's the shiny new things or just the air conditioner or just having power, they do not want to give it up. And the powers that be know that, and they will use it against you. I'm telling you, because we've seen it in 2020. And there's no end, depending on where you are, to what they're capable of. Like, no end. No end at all. I mean, all over the world. Canada, I don't even know what to make of Canada, but Canada's on some other crazy dystopian. I feel bad for them people up there, because they're still basically going through it, but on something a little bit different. But I mean, I'm just saying that to say that it's, if we don't collectively say no, they will do this. If we don't collectively say, hell no, this isn't happening, they will do this, and things that Wayne talked about tonight will come to pass. But we can stop it. It's a matter of what you're willing to sacrifice for what you know that's right, because there will be a sacrifice. This will come at a cost. Saying no always comes at a cost to the people that want you to do the thing. So keep that in mind and realize that, like, if the easiest way for me to put this is that, like, if you have a thing that you don't want to let go, whatever that might be, whatever because it's going to revolve around debt, like whatever you have left as far as payments, whether it's your house, your property, whatever it is, if you're in debt for that and you can't make that money without them to pay for that, that's what they're going to use against you. And it's coming. It's coming now. They're trying to do it now, right now. And we just have to say no. We have to get educated. We have to understand what this means, and we have to say no to this. But that's why I think voices like Wayne, like having as much research put into this to be able to articulate what it is, and then ultimately bringing it back around that it is a spiritual battle. That's where this lies. This lies at the feet of, it's a spiritual battle. And if you're not able to see it through those lenses, you're going to lose that battle. Drew, do you have any questions for Wayne before we get out of here soon?
I mean, if I sit here and think, probably a shit ton. I was kind of like in awe.
It's a lot. I know it's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I mean, do you see a way? And I'm thinking, see what it is I think the majority of people don't have the ability to critically think. So like they're told something, they repeat it, and like where you're a doctor, a nurse, a police officer, whoever you are, you're institutionalized by whatever research you're doing. You don't think to question it. And when people, I guess, like us, confront with the opposing viewpoints of it, like, no, the vaccines are poison or this or that, and then you have doctors or whoever like looking at you like you're insane, and there's this big divide. And thinking about what you said before, people who are retired, living on 401ks, older people who've worked 30, 40 years of a job and want to retire in the next 5, 10 years, and trying to even just get through to them about how to, keep cash alive. And because these are things like beyond getting into like deep occult stuff and things that are beyond everyday stuff for these people. Like you can't have certain conversations with certain people because you're talking to a brick wall. So to have a conversation that they could feel and look at, like, well, all right, everybody knows what a 401k is, and I'm going to need that to live. And it's like, all right, well, they're finding a way to pull that rug out from under you. I don't know if it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 2 years. We just don't know. I guess, like, it's just like, how do we, I guess, educate people who can't critically think but want to be open-minded and maybe see signs, but they're not the obvious signs that people like us see? I guess, where do we, I guess, kind of lead them, or how do we help them kind of strengthen the resistance? I know it's kind of like a question that it's like, how do you even answer it? But it's just like an overwhelming thing when you sit back and realize that, any day things can change. Obviously, things usually take a long time to change, but we don't know when that's going to be. It could be 10, 15, 20, 30 years, or it could be 2 years. What do you say to people like that? Like, to dumb it down for people who look at you with like a drooling face, like they just can't comprehend what we're talking about?
Well, you just have to find like what's the lowest common denominator. Where are they at in their own journey? Because each of us is at a different part in our lives and our journeys here and our understanding of things. So sometimes you just have to try and hit on the level of what's important to them. What do they find important, or how do they view the world? What's their vantage point? And oftentimes just pointing out the inconsistencies and the fallibility in some of the narratives that were presented is enough to do that. Now, most people are kind of surface level at their view of the world, and they'll tell you, follow the money. Well, follow the money only goes so far, because there's agendas that are beyond just money. Let's put it this way. The people who are really running things in this world, they can print money on demand. They proved that during COVID. The money's not the issue. But see, most people think in strictly those terms, because this is a material world, physical, hyper-physical paradigm way of thinking. That's right where they want you. So just trying to break through to people with the spiritual context of things. I tell people, make sure you get your heart right with God. make sure you get that relationship right with God. That's the most important thing right now. And I think that's what we all need to do. We need to have that connection to our Creator to help us through all of this. And if you have that connection and you can see things from a spiritual perspective, it gives you a much better view of what's going on in the world. Like most people will intrinsically feel that something's wrong, right? We all have that feeling when we look at things happening. You know something's wrong. You might not be able to put your finger on quite what it is, but you know it's wrong. Follow that intuition and know that there's something wrong with that, and maybe avoid that action or that course of action or that thing that you're looking at that you seem to have this inkling something's not right with it.
Yeah.
You look at that instinct, that intuition that we have. A lot of that derives from the spiritual side of things, from our spiritual nature. And we need to get back in touch with that in order to navigate through this mess of a world
Yeah.
that we're in right now.
I think that's very accurate, especially whenever it depends on the person, because some people are not spiritual. They only see the world as they perceive it as it is. There's nothing else behind the veil. And so like it's going to be hard to reach people by saying it's a spiritual battle that look at the world like that. So I think that's sage advice, at least, is like, try to meet them where they are. The other part is a lot of people are going to fall. You can't save everybody. So, all you can do is try to plant a seed and hope that it grows, because people will just laugh it off. They'll just say you're a crazy person, schizophrenic, That's just the nature of the beast. Wayne, I wanted to share this with you. We had a Rumble rant from Cubertimo. I'm thankful for people like Wayne who are out preaching this stuff, even though it's hard to get people to listen. But you can save one. But if you can save one, it's worth it. There it is. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
Pretty much
Even if one person benefits from anything I'm saying, I've done my job. That's how
Right.
I see it, and it is a job. I mean, I feel it's my mandate to expose evil where I see it, and I see a lot of evil inherent, and I see a lot of this stuff going on, and we need to be aware of this. And as far as reaching people who maybe don't have that kind of spiritual instinct, I would say this. I offer this to anybody who is an avowed atheist out there. Being an atheist is a very dangerous position to take. Look at the foundation of this country as a reason why. The Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By who? By their Creator. Your rights as a human being, your human rights are given to you by your Creator. They are God-given. Your rights are derived from God, not from the state. If you are an atheist and you disavow the existence of a Creator, you disavow the existence of God, you're disavowing your human rights in the sight of these people that control this world. That's a dangerous stance to take, because then the state will roll over you.
Yep.
You would not believe. You have no human rights. You are cattle. You are chattel in their eyes. And that is how they will treat you. That's a dangerous stance. So even if you're not spiritual, understand the legalese that they've built into this whole system. Like I said, weaponized language. This is one of the most basic things they've weaponized against us. Right there is all the standard you need to understand in order to know you're standing on some dangerous ground if you avow to be an atheist.
I've never heard
Absolutely
it put-
true.
Yeah, I've never heard it put that way. That was a very unique perspective that I can appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good place to kind of end it. I mean, I don't think we can even say anything better than that point. It's a spiritual battle, man. Realize that you're in it, whether you want to be or not.
And real quick, before you end, you didn't open with a prayer this episode. You want to end with a prayer?
Oh, shoot. All right, yeah. Lord, guide my words tonight. Help us do your will, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
I apologize for that. I always open the show with that. I was just really thrilled to get Wayne on, and it totally slipped my mind. So Thank you for reminding me, Drew.
I was saving that to the end. I'm like, we're not going to drop a prayer in the middle. I'll catch.
All right.
And drop prayer wherever, man.
Yeah.
Drop prayer wherever. We all need prayer, and more now than ever. This world is an ugly place, and it needs prayer. So
Yeah.
much
I think we.
respect. I'm happy to hear that you pray going into these shows and exiting these shows.
Yeah, we do it as much as we can. I think it's important because it's a context that a lot of people don't have. And not to keep you much longer, but when you were quoting some of the stuff from the founding, the Constitution, we had a guest on that was an attorney, a gun rights attorney, and he told us that he can't bring up the Second Amendment as an argument to gun rights in the system. So that just shows you the erosion of where we are, where you can't point to the thing that was written down that's supposed to restrain government in the government courtroom in order to point out how flawed their gun laws are. And I was astounded by that. Like it infuriated me to the point to understand that like this is where we are today, whether anyone likes it or not, is that they are eroding our God-given rights. And they're doing it because people consent to it. That's the only way they can get away with it. Some people are okay with some people not having these quote-unquote God-given rights. So that is the consent. They're okay with being permitted because they don't want somebody else to have it. And that is going to translate, as it did, to many other things. I just think it goes to show the point of how much they have been eroding what we should know. So, again, we're in a spiritual battle. And if you don't realize it, you're going to lose. Wayne, I want to thank you for coming on tonight, dude. It was great. Sage wisdom. There's so much, though, that I wish that we could have touched on. Would you be open to coming back on another show later on?
Yeah, man, just to hit me up and we'll put something together. It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you.
That was great. It really was. I just want to add a couple of things is that we have a commitment. Owen Benjamin, 6'3", supposed to come on. Let's hope that that comes through. He seems committed. So I think that would be great. Everyone stay tuned for that. Next week, we don't have a guest scheduled, so we're going to come on and do Banger Bucks. Everybody get ready for that. And I really appreciate the donations tonight, guys. It's a big deal because it helps to reinforce that like people are actually listening and contributing, and it means something to somebody. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for the Rumble Rants. Drew, you want to say bye?
Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. Till next time.
Don't forget, go subscribe to Wayne's channel, Alchemical Tech Revolution on YouTube. I know you're on X too. Is there any other places where they can find you?
Yeah, primarily just go to my website, www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. I'm also on Substack. I'm on Spotify. You can find me pretty much everywhere.
Awesome. All right. Go subscribe. Go help them out. You'll learn some stuff at the very least. All right. That was the shit show. You guys have